July 15th, time for a garden update. The goats see me out here and they think it's time to eat. Everybody's come up, but it's not time to eat. They were fed this morning, trust me. You can hear the construction in the background, 150 houses going over catty corner from us. Not a good thing. I know everybody has to have a place to live, but we used to live in the country. This gourd plant has just completely taken over. This was part of the compost I put in here, and evidently it was not fully composted. There must be 200 gourds in this. They're all over the place. So it goes from this end of the bed all the way down there, about 25 feet. And it's also taken over and crawling into the canna lilies. The lentil rose, the way they propagate is that they shoot their seeds. And so they have come down here, which is much to my delight. I love them down here. I transplanted these hostas this spring and they're starting to come back. Transplanted them a little bit late, but this little garden bed here is all shade now. This holly tree was about 6 feet tall when we moved in around 40 years ago. There was a dogwood here, died out because it just simply didn't get enough light. The balloon flowers are doing great. The yarrow needs to be cut back, and I'll probably do that sometime in the next couple of weeks and have a fall bloom. These are a couple of Shasta daisy plants I was able to pick up real cheap at Lowe's. The sage, which I thought was perennial, but only in zone 9 and we're 7, so maybe it'll self-seed. This nicotine plant's doing well. Foxglove is surviving. I wouldn't call it thriving. I'm hoping it's popping out some seeds there. That's lantana right there, not blooming very well, but getting a lot of height to it. I was just up in the mountains in North Carolina, and their black-eyed Susans look beautiful. Mine, not so much. I transplanted this dianthesis the other day. It was up and covered up with weeds, and I weeded to this whole hill and just decided to transplant these, and they're doing amazingly well, although we've had a thunderstorm every afternoon, so that helps. My echinacea up here I picked up at Walmart. They're doing great. The gazebo is just covered up, and I'm going to do a separate pond video coming up here as soon as I get all of the video edited from the Grandfather Mountain Highland Games, which I had about 4 hours worth of video, trying to condense it down to 10-minute segments, no more than 10-minute segments. This sweet corn patch is gone, and I've been pulling up the crabgrass and feeding a little bit of it time to the horses. Again, I don't want to give them too much to change their diet at a time, and then I'll put something in here, maybe a green manure crop. This sweet corn is looking good, although it's not very tall, and the ears seem to be pretty small. But sweet corn is sweet corn, and fresh out of the garden, you can't beat it. Carrots, doing great. Been feeding those to the horses a little bit at a time. They really enjoy the treat. Yesterday, my exterminator came, and he's the one that told me about using the paint roller to get rid of the sage, and that worked. And yesterday we were talking about tomatoes, and I was telling him such a hard time I was having, so he said try to get Parks Improved Whopper, and that's what this is. I picked it up at Home Depot yesterday and just planted it yesterday afternoon. This cucumber is on its last legs, but we're still picking off of it. Some huge cucumbers down in there that we have failed to harvest. They will go to the chickens or the worms. The worms love those things. I put a couple in here the other day. Some ripe tomatoes in here. This is that unicorn that they gave me 5 seeds for. I have really been lucky with my zucchini and squash. Normally they don't last this long into the summer, but this year they're doing great. Beautiful little squash there. It looks like the slow to bolt lettuce is finally bolting, but maybe a little bit still tender. Another one of the unicorn plants. As you see the stub here, I need to pull that up. This is that volunteer sunflower, and it got blown over in a thunderstorm the other day. So I put it in this tomato cage where a tomato, the Better Bush tomato, had just bit the dust. If the seeds are ripe at all, the finches will be loving this. Looks terrible right now, but it's great finch seed. I'm still dealing with weeds like every gardener. It's just hard to keep ahead of them. This Better Bush just doesn't look better. It has whatever is plaguing me. There is not, well, there are 2 tomatoes on it. And I don't see, well, there's a bloom. This Roma, they are really long and looking good. But again, that's the only tomatoes on it. Up here, don't see any blooms. Way at the top. So maybe this was an indeterminate Roma, which most are not. So maybe I'll get some late tomatoes off of it. Although none of these tomatoes from the Champion 2 variety have ripened, there's a lot of tomatoes on here, and I'm definitely going to try that again next year. The celebrity tomatoes are doing great. So that's another crop I'll put back next year. I'm hoping to get some raspberries, a fall crop off of here. This is one of those crops that you get 2 crops off of, I believe. The lotus have just outdone themselves this year. Look at all the seed pods and the blooms to come. They only last a day, so these will start falling off, and then you're left with that beautiful seed pod. But I think the muck defense did its job here. And look at this gourd. This gourd is up into the pomegranate all the way to the top. And there's a big gourd developing right back there. This was a bushel basket gourd I think I grew last year on the House of Vines. The House of Vines didn't do great because it was in the shade, but this gourd is really loving the sun. I have morning glories everywhere. The annual's looking good here. I wish I would have gotten some more of this spider plant. These radishes are mainly tops, very little radish on the bottom. That's because of the heat, and I planted them so late. This is that smooth yellow squash that my wife likes. We'll get some fresh eating off of it. But this yellow squash are doing well. They normally don't last this long into the season, but they're still blooming and thriving. And I have used no pesticides on these. So they're one of the celebrities. Definitely gonna plant some more of those next year. And this volunteer sunflower is just looking great. Got it propped up here and tied to the fence. Another gourd back there. Coleus looking good, and this volunteer tomato has a ripe tomato on it. Evidently this is that egg yolk tomato I planted last year. Water lilies, no blooms, overcrowded. And the 4 o'clocks. Come up over the rose. The rose is looking bad right now, so I just let it cover it up. I'm going to leave you here today at the pond. Wish I had a louder waterfall. There is so much traffic and construction noise now, it's really hard to get a peaceful moment. This little guy jumped into the water as I walked in here.